School Board President for San Bernardino Unified School District. Education is definitely my top priority, hands down. People will say, Abigail, you talk too much about education, but in reality, it is a true pathway out of poverty for many communities. And when you look at education as a whole, you look at early childhood development, with many of our families, if they pass a certain threshold, they can't afford childcare, and so then they have to find other ways. When you look at higher education, once they graduate high school, what happens then? Making sure that we have good career pathways for them, good paying jobs, and then making sure that they're able to access college. Now, I know college is not for everyone, but at the same time, we want the students to decide for themselves and not us decide for them. So that's where education comes into play. And just so you know, I went through 14 different schools. I was in foster care. I lived in Mexico another year. My parents, regardless of the situation I was in, they wanted the best for me and my siblings. I was the oldest of three. And when I entered foster care, I was 7 years old, so I had to grow up really fast, really quick. And by the time I got into high school, I remember taking leftover classes. They gave me a list. Abigail, these are the classes you can take. One of them was auto shop, and I thought, why not take auto shop? Although I wanted to become an artist, it wasn't the field I wanted to go into. But I thought, well, might as well just learn one of the trades. And I learned how to change the shocks. I learned how to change the oil in the tires, and I still do myself today, change the oil. But it wasn't my choice. My choice meaning that it wasn't an opportunity where I was able to go to higher education. I would see kids go to the counselor's meeting, and I would think, my goodness, these 4.0 kids have some major issues, and not realizing that the fact that they were going in to see with regarding academics. I had no idea until I had my own children. So I have 5 children, 4 are currently going to college right now, and my youngest is in 11th grade. And I remember finding out about the A through G's. Anybody know what the A through G's are? And I didn't know about that. I was like, oh my God, do other parents know? Counselors, do they know that counselors help you with academics as well? That was like my aha moment. And that's when I started getting active with my children in school. I started getting active within PTA, school site council. You mentioned it. I was trying to help other parents. I would travel from San Bernardino, because just so you know, I live in San Bernardino, which was one of the poorest performing school districts in the state of California. And my children were attending one of the poorest schools within the poorest performing school district in the state of California. So you can imagine my frustration as a mom when I would hear teachers say, in one case, saying, well, Abigail, not all kids are going to go to college, but I want mine to. I want them to have the opportunity. So then a nonprofit organization saw the work that I was doing and recruited me to work with African American parents as well as Latino parents. And then we were looking at parents from communities that were struggling financially, our low-income families. And I would go to the different school sites and try to address on how they can get engaged. Then I ended up running for school board. They asked me, Abigail, you should definitely bring what we can do in the school district to try to turn it around, because I was one of those families where we couldn't afford just to leave the district. The area that we were in, we couldn't just easily move to another school district or have them inter-transferred. I've tried to go to Redlands Unified, and we were denied. And I'm thinking, what are the options for my kids? And that's when I decided to run for school board. We did Zumbathons, you name it. We tried to raise money, little monies here. We had families, students walking for us, and we won by 61 votes. 61 votes. So just so you realize how important every vote matters. And so we won by 61 votes. And our school district back in the day was around 66% graduation rate. Today we're at 91.8. And I say that only because people don't realize San Bernardino Unified School District, although I'm not running for school board, is the 9th largest school district in the state of California. We manage over $500 million of funding. We have 4 bargaining units. We're one of the highest employers in the state, in the region. And we were able to do this because of how we were being transparent with our funds. Programs that were working, great, let's add more money to it. The programs that weren't working, what can we do to remove those or transition them out? And that's exactly what we did. Another thing that we did in the school district was we paid our teachers higher wages and making sure that they had full compensation package with healthcare. Now, They don't pay nothing. It's 100% for themselves and their families. The reason why I say that is because growing up, didn't have healthcare insurance. I didn't, my family growing up, not even dental, no healthcare. So if we got sick, we had to go south of the border. I remember having this extreme pain in my stomach and was going through it several days, and I passed out, and my mom immediately called 911. I told her, that woke me up so fast. I told my mom, hang up the phone, because those bills can easily range between $10,000 to $12,000. And I remember at one point, I couldn't even afford making those payments. And that was a reality many families were facing. And then when finally I ended up getting, I have 5 children, so each of those, that was the only time I had health care, was going to the doctor through being pregnant. And I would see the dentist. I would try to take advantage and see the dentist during that time too as well. So healthcare is a big thing for me. When we finally had healthcare insurance, I remember going from Medi-Cal, waiting for my children to be seen with an appointment 2 hours, sometimes even 4, with an appointment, and going from having healthcare insurance, quality healthcare insurance, and waiting only 20 minutes. And I was like seeing people complain because they had to wait 30 minutes, and I'm like, oh my God, is this a reality? So the thing is that I've been there, I've done that, I understand the issues that many families are facing. We didn't have electricity for about a week, and my cousin calls me and saying, Abigail, there's a job in Maricopa, Taft, Bakersfield area. I don't know if anybody recognizes that area. Tomato fields. And that's one thing that I've always been. I'm not afraid to work hard. I'm not afraid to fight for the families that need to be fought for. I worked in the tomato fields during the summertime, making $300 a week. And I remember the struggle that I had to wear a bandana, because in the beginning I was like, I'm not wearing a bandana, but realizing the pesticides that were going on, and that's when I started realizing not only are we putting employees through these issues, but it's also the environmental portion of what we're putting into these vegetables and these fruits and so forth that's impacting us, and especially the workers. So those are some of the issues that I was fighting for and trying to address. And when I came back from that, I started working at Riverside Regional Medical Center, working with patients that were victims of crime, veterans, and many of them didn't have health care. And then when I started finding out about the veterans that didn't have the health care, the ones that were provided through the Loma Linda Veterans Hospital were struggling to get the type of benefits they needed. There were a lot of malpractices that was going on at these type of hospitals that weren't really addressing the veterans' needs. And many veterans that came and were not receiving any penny. I would have Agent Orange. They had cancer from Agent Orange, not realizing that they qualified for benefits because the government weren't giving them access to it. So these are some of the issues that I've been fighting for, because I've been there and I was able to read and hear about the stories. My mom, her husband passed away, and she became homeless because through the house was under his name, was not under her name. She lost the home because she wasn't able to get it transferred. During that time, since she wasn't able to afford it, she lost the health care piece because she could no longer afford $300 a month for COBRA. And she didn't qualify for Medicare. So the reality is we find a lot of women. I started researching. I go, Mom, I didn't realize there was so many women in your situation that are losing everything. She was able to live with me, but can you imagine those that are not able to afford it, what's happening to them? And when you talk about the homelessness, many are living in the streets, not knowing what to do. And when you get Walmart jobs where it's paying barely the minimum, and you're not able to sustain yourself because these works are not enough. When you look at the warehouses, I'm in San Bernardino, I have to tell people, I'm in San Bernardino, so believe me, I've been there. These warehouses, they're paying a percentage point for taxes because they were promised, well, we're gonna bring the jobs to your neighborhoods. We're gonna bring those good paying jobs. But the problem is that they don't have community benefits agreements, so then they lie. Once they come and build their warehouses, and they start offering part-time jobs, they're starting to offer minimum wage jobs with no benefits. And a lot of these are just temporary agencies. So when we say we're providing good paying jobs, we're lying. They're lying to us. And how are we able to allow them to do that? We have to stop somewhere. Now, and this is happening, I went to Cherry Valley, and this is happening in Cherry Valley. People don't realize just because you're in a community where you probably thinking you're safe, Cherry Valley is a rural area, it's coming to you. It will eventually come to you, and where are we gonna draw the line and ask them to stop? Unless you're bringing good paying job, making sure that it's following the guidelines of environmental justice, and what I mean by that, all these trucks that are idling, all these trucks are idling in neighborhoods. All of these, and I went to Bloomington, warehouse is literally in the backyard of one of the neighbors. Their backyard is a warehouse. And they said, well, we've been fighting for years, Abigail. The county supervisors are not doing anything about it. They'll approve it, and then they're putting it in our neighborhoods. And where do you think these neighborhoods are at? They're not gonna be in those wealthy neighborhoods. They're not gonna be in those areas where they're affluent. They're gonna pick areas similar to San Bernardino, Cherry Valley, which they're already doing, Bloomington, and you never know if it might possibly come here. So that's why we have to advocate. County supervisors need to be held accountable. This is happening in Riverside and San Bernardino County. What are we doing there? So when you look at good paying jobs, that's one thing that I'm fighting for, good paying jobs. None of this temporary minimum $15 an hour. We have to have good paying jobs. That one job, as the unions will say, one job should be enough. And the support that I've been receiving through our many unions, I've been gathering and I've been walking and I've been fighting alongside our several unions, UFCW. When you look at our teachers unions, when you look at CWA, when you look at all these other unions that are trying to fight for bare minimum, I'm there fighting with them. And action speaks louder than words. I've been doing this for years. I'm not just coming in and just doing this overnight, learning the talking points and just doing this overnight. I've been doing this from the time that I started advocating for my kids in school and until now. Now, I am the school board president, and I also ran for San Bernardino for the Assembly District 40, and I wanted to briefly, if you can, and I'll take this one as an example. If you can, so now how are we gonna win this district? You have to remember, we're here up against a Republican. This seat has only been held by a Republican. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna try to make sure they're gonna fight, and they're gonna try to push out the Democrats that are running. So this is where it's gonna be important that we try to stay focused on who can actually be the Republican. When you look in the back of the sheet, this is how we're gonna do it. The red area is the Assembly District that I ran back in 2016. I was able to reach 73,000 votes. I have the yes IDs, okay? And then in the blue area, that's the school district. We are a large range of amount of voters that we have in those areas. So this is something that no other candidate, and I'm serious, no other candidate has the name recognition that I have so far. It was about $3 million invested just in name ID for myself and a few million to attack me. Those attacks are still good because then people are still hearing my name. And so they're not easily fooled when the next election comes up. So what I'm asking you today is asking you for your support. Now, it may be difficult because we have other good candidates, but at the same time, we have to find that one good candidate that's gonna fight and win against the Democrat, against the Republican, and I am that one candidate. So I ask for your support today and in ensuring that we do make that fight winnable, and I receive your support. I did not print out the list of endorsements, but in Sacramento, it's called a trifecta. I have received all three areas of the Legislative Caucus, the Latino Caucus, the Legislative LGBTQ Caucus, and I'm able to receive the Women's Caucus. And why is this Women's Caucus so important in Sacramento? Senator Connie Nicholas, she's the chair, a wonderful woman. She is the chair of the Legislative Caucus, and I remember people telling me, Abigail, you can't do this because she's the chair, and she's supporting another candidate. And I said, you know what? Each member, I'm a school board member, so I think that's where the experience comes into play. Each vote counts, and each of your vote counts. And I was able to garner the Women's Caucus endorsement, and so it was such a blessing because I knew that each vote mattered, and in this situation, the same with you. So that's what I asked. If you could please visit our website. If you can, with a small amount of money that you can help provide, will help us definitely succeed in making sure that we we win the primary election, which is March. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm not sure if you have any questions.
I'd just like to make a point about your efforts in terms of the healthcare and what we talked
Yes.
about before. Say, I'm an educated person. I have a PhD.
Yes.
So I had my bachelor's, I had my master's. Routinely, workplaces do not give you benefits, especially for the first 6 months, or the first 3 months, or 6 months, and then they cut back. And in private, you're better, so much better off in government, but in private, they can do anything they want to. And with women being only earning about 66%. I mean, I've been ordered and told that I was going to lose my job if I talked to my employees, the people that I was in charge of, what their salary was, because the men were all paid more than I was.
Right, it's true.
So the, I think it's very, it's critical to look at, not only, yes, we look at the healthcare industry and rising costs, but what you're talking about is so critical that women are paid less, no matter what their education level is. Then the benefits are not consistent, or they don't do benefits, and they don't pay enough for benefits, or they take them away. And that, I think all of us just aren't aware all the time of that, and so we go, oh, well, healthcare for all, well, everybody can. That's why it's so important that each person have theirs, so that we're not dependent on a corporation telling us whether we have. I haven't had health care most of the time in my adult life. And that's why when you're talking about doing things, it's like I'm so good at doing all these things because I had to take care of myself.
Right.
And you have to and take care of others.
And you find home remedies, you find other solutions, and unfortunately we have to try to do better. And healthcare is definitely a big piece. And so when you look at everyone, how we're going to help everyone receive some type of healthcare, and it has to be quality. None of this where, like I told you, I noticed a difference between night and day. Those that you're under, even with the government, if we're to have a healthcare system for everyone, that we have to hold them accountable and making sure that they're servicing and providing the adequate healthcare that they should be providing for everyone. It shouldn't be because of your class you deserve less. And I remember someone, and I won't mention names in the school district, that said, Abigail, I don't know how the Democrats are wanting health care for everyone. Homeless shouldn't be having health care. And I'm thinking, oh my God, am I really hearing this? Because you don't come from a class of being able to pay for your fair share, then you shouldn't be able to access certain things, and that is not right. We have to make sure that the bare minimum, clean air, clean water, when you look at education, quality education, and the quality health care is a huge piece in providing this access for everyone. Yes?
As far as going back to, even though these are different districts and everything,
Right.
my personal belief is that the decisions that we make as far as people that we put in the office, despite the district, affect everybody up here in the high desert.
It does.
As far as industry, jobs, I know that everybody talks about better paying, higher paying wages. In order to get the higher paying wages, we got to get the better jobs up here.
Right, of course.
So how do we do that? How do you do that? Or how do you participate in that?
Well, see, one of the things that we're doing in our school district that we're trying to change the dynamics and we're setting that example of what it can really look like. We have career pathways. So we have also one of the tracks is entrepreneurship and trying to create small businesses within. So we have to kind of step away from large industry, large corporation type of companies and look at more small businesses and how we can support them. Before Walmart came into play, before all these big companies came into play, we were going into small businesses and visiting their stores. So we have to change that mindset. Redlands is one of the great examples of what they're doing what they're doing different is that they're actually supporting small businesses, trying to grow an infrastructure of small businesses instead of having corporations come in and take over what they're doing. So in our school district, I think it's important that we start implementing ways how youth can start at an earlier age and how to create that pathway for them to start building their own businesses and providing those supports. Now, how are we going to be able to do that through the taxes piece? My brother-in-law, he's pretty upset with me, because Abigail, I own a trucking business, a small one, and now I have to pay more money because I have to go to zero emissions. And he's upset because I'm the one that helped push legislation and supporting our local neighbors and supporting certain legislation. I told him, you know what, I'm sorry that you're being impacted by it. Now he has to get a loan of $200,000. But I think what the legislation we have to look at is how we're looking at how it's impacting small businesses. We say we support small businesses, but are we really supporting small businesses? And I think that's where it's going to have a lens to making sure that small businesses are receiving more money to help support those ventures that we're trying to make them change. So that's another area that I will look at and focus, because a lot of them are going to end up going out of business, and we don't want that either. We want them to be successful, but at the same time, we don't want to punish them. So that's an extra lens that I'm going to have up in Sacramento.
Abigail, you talked about building entrepreneurs
Yes.
in your school system. I was just looking up, and it says that with respect to your
Yes.
district, it says the college readiness is actually more recent.
Yes,
So
it is, it is.
You have 90-something% of people
Yes.
that graduate,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean a lot if they're not prepared.
Going out of college.
So you have, it says that only 33% of your graduates meet college admission standards, and the state average is 50, and only 20% have SAT readiness grades, where you have 50% of the state average.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's one thing that got me to the school board. In our school district, you say it's 33. Back when I ran, it was at 11 to 17%. Nobody was paying attention to this. And the reason why I'm saying this is, remember what I said, our school district was the lowest performing school district in the state of California, and my children were attending the lowest performing schools within the lowest. So I'm not trying to justify, there's so much work that needs to be done.
Well, what have you done? How are you gonna make it better? Like, what are the actual?
So what we did in our school district, we looked at the demographics of students, which were the students that were underperforming. And I was part of the District African American Advisory Council, and they weren't receiving any funding. Our African American students weren't receiving any funding. For those that's in the education system, we have mandated for EL students, right? For those, we have mandated for certain students. But our African American students were underperforming than everyone else, higher than special ed. So what we did, my first year, was to allocate that one line item and making sure that we were providing money for them. And I got pushback from my own community. I got pushback from the Latinos saying, Abigail, what are you doing? You're supposed to give us more money, the Latinos. And I go, I'm not taking away money. I'm just adding more money to a group that hasn't necessarily been receiving any funds. And because we gave ourselves permission, one of the things that, and I was the first one that did that, one of the reasons we gave ourselves permission to do that, we created an African American task force. We created many programs out of that. We were looking at what was causing the issue. Parent engagement. So the students that were not accessing the honor classes, students that weren't accessing the AP classes, what are we going to do differently? And because of that, the next year and the next 2 years, we were able to jump significantly with the students' college access as well as high school graduation rate. What we ended up finding out is because we were able to help those that were struggling the most, we ended up finding strategies that were going to help us for all the rest of the students. And because of that, it created a domino effect that nobody really expected. Everyone was rising now. I'm not going to say that we're not low. We are extremely low. And that is something that I have been pushing for. Because in our school district, they were not even measuring the A through Gs by how many percentage were actually meeting them. They were just saying how many kids are attending them, which is very different. Our kids were saying, oh, Abigail, 50% of our kids are entering the A through G classes. It says nothing if they're meeting the requirements. And so I had to push through several board meetings to make sure, we need to make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable to do better. So we're not there yet, but this is definitely something that nobody expected us to rise. And we're definitely finding ways on how we can help support. So I don't know, I know probably didn't answer your question. You're coming from Redlands, which is a very different area in pertaining to education. But like I said, I'm coming from one of the poorest areas that you can imagine. So we're trying our best. And I think that if we're able to focus on areas that are underperforming, we can do more for the rest of the kids. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.